بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضاه، وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. We live in a time today where the trials and the distractions and the evil that has engulfed and become extremely widespread to the point where there is not a household except that it has entered into it, has now become the norm, whereby as much as we try to protect our families and to protect our children from these trials and from this widespread evil, that the enemies of Islam use every means at their disposal to spread and to make sure that it reaches every single household, whether it be when we walk outside in public, whether it be smartphones and other electronic gadgets, whether it be the schools that we send our children to, and whether it be the internet and social media. Wherever you look today, there is fitna. Wherever you look today, there is evil. And so knowing this and acknowledging this fact, which is not hidden from anyone who believes in Allah and His Messenger and knows some of that which Islam has come with, of morality and of goodness, and encouraging morality and encouraging akhlaq and etiquettes. Anyone who knows even a little bit of what Islam has come with to preserve these things and to encourage these things knows that that which they see around them today is in complete contradiction to that which Al-Islam has come with. And so as parents of children, as Muslim parents of children in today's society and in this era and this time that we are living in, it is even more incumbent upon us in comparison to times of old to be vigilant and to take the matter of raising our children seriously, whether it be educating them regarding their religion, whether it be protecting them from the evils within society, and so on and so forth. It is our job as parents to make sure that our children know Tawheed and know Islamic morals and etiquettes and behavior, and likewise manners, that we educate our children and that we teach them these things so that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala they grow up to being responsible adults and adults who have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this talk, we are going to discuss a specific matter that has to do with our daughters, more specifically, and that is the issue of hijab. The issue of hijab that the enemies of Islam have targeted and have spread many different shubuhat, many different doubts regarding, in order to get the young Muslim woman or the young Muslim girl to have an attitude of dislike towards the hijab and to convince her that it is backwardness and that it is something that was required in times of old, but today in this current society, in the modern society, it is not something necessary. Convincing her that this is her choice, convincing her that she is free to choose, and so on and so forth. And so the enemies of Islam have targeted one of the most important aspects of Islamic womanhood, and they have an agenda behind that. And so it is our job as parents to be first and foremost aware of this agenda and aware of the tactics that the enemies of Islam employ in misguiding our young daughters. And they begin from a young age. They begin from a young age. And so, inshallah ta'ala, in this talk, I will be addressing some of the ways that we can get our daughters not only to wear the hijab and keep the hijab, but to also love the hijab. What can we do as parents, as fathers, as mothers, living in today's society, with all the distractions that exist, with all the electronic devices, with all the TV shows and movies and television, and the Netflixes and the Disneys and all of these other things? What can we do in this current climate and in this current environment to raise our daughters to love hijab and to protect them from the agenda and the plots of the enemies of Islam, who wish to strip her of her morality and of her modesty from a young age? And this isn't something that is new. Rather, this is a tactic that was used by the enemies of Islam from centuries ago, aiming to destroy the Muslim nation from within, from its foundation. Them knowing that the foundation of the Muslim household is the woman, is that little girl who will one day be the mother of a household and will be the backbone of a household. They wish to corrupt her from young so that the future generation will likewise become corrupt, because they know if the mother is corrupt, then the entire household will become corrupt. And they know that the woman in Islam holds this high status and is of this great importance, and that is why they target the Muslim woman, and that is why they begin with her modesty and her chastity. That is why they begin with her modesty and her chastity. And so, without further ado, inshallah ta'ala, I'll get into a few points that us as parents can take into consideration and practice in our homes, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, with our daughters, in order to achieve this goal, to having our daughters not only wear the hijab, but love wearing the hijab. And that is the goal. Not that they just wear it because they believe they have to, but rather that they love it, and they love it more than anything else. That they love the hijab, and they love modesty, and they love covering themselves more than anything else. The first point is regarding the father. Where does it begin, this journey of getting your daughter to wear the hijab and love the hijab? It actually begins before you even have a daughter. Rather, it begins before you even get married. And that is in choosing the mother that will raise your daughter and be an example for her when it comes to the hijab, and raise her upon righteousness, and raise her to love the hijab. And so before even teaching her, that she will see her as an example, as a woman who covers herself, as a woman that does not allow strange men to see her body and to see her hair, right? A woman that is chaste and that is modest, right? And so as a father, first and foremost, you choose a righteous wife that, wears the correct hijab, wears the hijab that is in accordance with the legislation, wears the hijab that is in accordance with the legislation, and not what we find today, where some sisters, may Allah guide them and us, believe that whatever they deem to be hijab is hijab. So if she covers her hair with a headscarf, and she wears makeup and tight-fitting clothing, then she believes she is covered. knowing deep down that in reality she is not, because she is not fulfilling the actual purpose of hijab, which is to conceal her beauty and not to make a wanton display of her beauty and to attract men to her. And so when you are choosing a wife, a spouse, as a man, that you choose a woman that wears the correct hijab in accordance with the Sharia, and likewise that the women that are around her likewise do so. That the women that are likewise around her likewise do so, such as her friends. What are the type of friends that she keeps? Do they wear hijab? Are they women that are all over social media, posting themselves all over social media? And then this, woman that you decide to marry, she will bring those type of women around your daughter, and your daughter will become exposed to that type of behavior. Do her sisters, if she has any, do they cover and wear hijab as well? Or are they women that uncover and will also possibly influence your daughter? Likewise, her mother. So what would be your mother-in-law? Does she cover as well? Right? This is how you make your burden less for yourself. When you choose a righteous wife, that will be an example for your daughter. And the women that are also around her and connected to her are likewise women who cover. Then that is what your daughter from a young age will become exposed to. Those will be the women that she will take as an example, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And so that is the first step, that this begins before you even have a daughter and before you even get married. That is the first point. The second point is that when do you begin introducing the hijab and wearing the hijab to your daughter? When is it too soon? When is it too late? This is a point and a very important matter that you have to discuss with the woman that you will be marrying before marriage. Because what happens, and due to experience with many different people that I've counseled and advised when it comes to their marriages, is that there is a clash and a disagreement that always occurs, not always, but in many marriages, occurs regarding how we dress our daughter. And this is a problem because many people did not consider that this would be an issue before marriage. They may have been ignorant about it, that they did not bring this up before they even married. When do you believe is a right time to put on the hijab for your daughter? This is a discussion that must happen before marriage, because in order to avoid the challenges and the difficulties that will happen if a clash occurs, then you do not want to deal with that. And so I advise and I encourage that you have this discussion beforehand, that you have this discussion beforehand, and that you ask, if you are a brother, that you ask the wife that you will be marrying, or that you are choosing to marry, your potential spouse, about this issue. And inshallah ta'ala, if you are on the same page, then فَبِهَا وَنِعْمَتْ, alhamdulillah. And if you are not, then I would go as far as saying, then do not choose this woman as a wife for you. Do not choose this woman as a wife for you. Likewise, sisters, have this discussion with the brother that you decide to marry. You may see that he's practicing in general, that he's able to take care of you financially, etc., etc. However, the discussion of how you will raise your children, and specifically when you will introduce the hijab to your daughter, that is a discussion that you must have. And if he believes, has this misconception that a lot of Muslims have due to ignorance, right, and being influenced by the West and the pressures of the West, and trying to conform to the societal norms in the West, where little girls are, allowed to wear dresses and short skirts and these types of things, and believing that if you deprive your child, right, of these things, that you are somehow harming them, that you are somehow making them sad or breaking their heart, that they see all the other little girls dressing in this manner and your daughter is the only one who is not dressing like that. You allow yourself to become vulnerable to these societal norms, and you incline to conform to those societal norms instead of conforming to your religion. Instead of conforming to your religion. And in reality, these are from the matters that are from the evils and from the detrimental effects of living in the West. This is from amongst them. From amongst them is that although you wish to practice your religion, because you are not strong enough in your iman, you become vulnerable to following the societal norms just so you can seem like a parent that is making their child happy, or so that your child does not hate you. You convince yourself of these things. And so the age now, when do you actually get your daughter to start wearing the hijab? And what you have to know is that if you wait until after your daughter has become used to wearing dresses and wearing skirts and having her hair out and these types of things, even though she's not held accountable for it as a child, but if you allow her to become accustomed to this from a young age, and that she sees this to be normal, and then you wait until after she reaches the age of 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, after now she's become so used to this type of dress, and her parents allowed her to wear it, not only allowed her, bought it for her so that she can wear. And then you think that when she reaches that age that you are somehow going to just switch all of that to hijab, then you are mistaken. And this is the actual fitna that many parents are dealing with now. Those ones who contact you and ask you, how do I get my daughter to wear the hijab and love the hijab, and I'm dealing with this issue and that issue. Well, that is because you chose to neglect this matter at a young age, where before she reaches the age of distinction, which is different for each child, but normally around the ages of 6 or 7 years old. And what is meant by the age of distinction is that the child now starts to understand shame and that you're supposed to cover your private parts. And they start to realize and understand what is nakedness, right? When a child is 2 years old, 3 years old, 1, 2, and 3, and they run around the house naked, no matter who's in the house, they still have not reached that age. However, after they get a bit older, 5, some children even as young as 5, 6, 7 years old, they now start to develop, their mind starts to develop, and they start to understand that they're not supposed to show their private parts to anyone else, that they're supposed to cover, that if anyone is, for example, walking into their room, they'll cover themselves so that that person does not see them, as long as it's not their parents, right? Likewise, if they see someone else, an adult or another child, that isn't wearing their clothes, or their aura is exposed, they start to understand what the aura is, and they know to look away, right? When a child reaches that age, that you have to make sure that you introduce the hijab to your daughter before that age. And why is that? That is because when she becomes used to the hijab before that age, then it will become second nature to her once she reaches that age. Once she reaches the age of distinction, then it will be second nature to her. It will be something that you already got her accustomed to. And so you make your job easier later on. And you won't need to then go through the struggle of having to convince her of why she should wear the hijab. You won't need to go through that because you took care of it beforehand. So my advice is to start young, even as early as 4 years old, 5 years old, that when she's going outside, you put on the hijab for her. right? If she's in her house and she's playing, and obviously that's fine. If she's at the relative's house and she's playing around, with little kids and this and that, then it's fine. However, when she's going out in public, get her accustomed to wearing her hijab. Get her accustomed to wearing hijab. And then when she gets a little bit older, the age of distinction, then you start introducing the idea and the concept of that boys and girls don't mix, and that men and women don't mix, right? And that she shouldn't uncover her hair in front of other boys or in front of other men. You get her accustomed to this concept. You teach her that this is how it is, so that she naturally will do it, and she will grow up and knowing that this is something that is the norm, and this is something that a Muslimah does. However, if you allow her to mix with boys and to mix with men, for example, if you as a father have your friends over and your daughter is now 9, 10, 11 years old, even if she hasn't reached the age of puberty, but she has reached an age where she's developing into a woman soon, and that her mind, she starts to understand things, and she knows, and she now has shyness around men, right? She prefers not to be around men. And you thinking that it's perfectly normal because of growing up in the West, and since it's normal in the West, then of course it's normal, right? Because what happens is we've become so accustomed to the culture, the Western culture, that we deem as the norm whatever the West deems as the norm. And we begin to see the Islamic etiquettes and Islamic moral code, code of conduct. We start to believe that that is strange, that becomes foreign to us. So someone saying that, I won't bring my 8-year-old daughter around my male friends when I have them over, they may think you're crazy in today's society. I'm talking about Muslims. They may think you're crazy, but you're not doing it because you believe it's haram. Rather, you are doing it to teach your daughter for when it will become haram for her. And Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala has a very important statement that he's made when it comes to raising children. He said that the one, meaning he's addressing the parents. So the parent that does not, he said that the parent that does not forbid for their child that which will become forbidden for them when they reach the age of puberty, when they reach adulthood, then they have not shown their child mercy. And the parent that does not make obligatory for their child that which will become obligatory for them in adulthood, meaning after the age of puberty, then they have not shown mercy to their child. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean that you are now saying that your 6-year-old daughter showing her hair is haram? No. Rather, what you are doing is you are getting her accustomed to it. You are getting her accustomed to it. And there is a proof for that in the Sharia, whereby the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the well-known hadith, whereby he mentions that we teach your children to pray at 7. What does that mean? Does that mean that it is if your child doesn't pray at 7, that they're held accountable? No. So why did the Prophet ﷺ instruct us to teach our children, to begin teaching them by the age of 7? Because by the age of 7, they now have reached the age of distinction, and they know, they can understand now ahkam of salah, and that you pray 5 times a day. Their brains are able to understand that. And so you teach them because it will eventually become wajib for them. Even though it is not wajib for them now, it's not obligatory for them now, but it will become obligatory for them once they reach the age of puberty. So the Prophet ﷺ instructed us to teach our children by the age of 7. And likewise, we teach our daughters by the age of distinction. By the age of distinction, she should be accustomed to the hijab and modesty and covering her beauty and her aura and not allowing other men or boys to see her, right? And you will see that once she reaches the age of 7, 8, 9 years old, that you will not need to tell her to cover. She will do it automatically. That when you have, as a father, you have your male friends over, she will not come into the room. She will stay with the women or with her mother and her siblings. She will not come over to the men. And this is a problem that a lot of brothers have, even brothers who are practicing. May Allah pardon them and us and guide them and us. That they think that it's cute to have their daughter come into a room with a bunch of men, his friends, and hug them, and each one is hugging their daughter and kissing her and putting her on their laps, etc. This is inappropriate, because if you get your daughter used to that type of behavior, later on you're going to have to deal with the issue of convincing her that that is wrong. And that is the problem that we have in many cultures. In many cultures, Muslims, that when the child, this is something that they neglect when either the boys or the girls are young, this mixing and not teaching them from young the matter of segregation between the genders, for those that are not permissible for one another, right? For those who are permissible for one another. So teaching them who are their maharam. For the boy, who is your mahram? Who are you able to mix with and see without hijab, etc.? And who should you not mix with and you cannot see without hijab, right? And when the boy is young and he has now reached the age of distinction and now knows, what a woman is and understands that men and women are different, and he knows the aura of a woman, that boy should not mix with women. So a mother should not bring him to the gatherings that she goes to with a bunch of sisters. That is completely inappropriate. And a lot of parents make the mistake and think that a boy, for example, who's 9, 10, 11 years old, does not know, what the aura of a woman is, and may not even find it attractive. They believe that this only starts after puberty, right? And you will become the trial for your child. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. You will be the sabab if that child now falls into fitna because of the woman that he's mixing with at the age of 10, 11, 12 years old, and what he sees, because obviously in these gatherings, women take their hijab off, right? And so he's mixing and seeing this. Likewise, the girl, she's mixing with men and becoming comfortable with men. If later on, a couple of years down the road, that these thoughts and these feelings remain with that child, you will have been the cause of that. And so in order to protect your children, you have to cut this off from a young age and get them to understand this from a young age. The next point regarding the hijab and how we can get our daughters to love the hijab and love wearing the hijab is that we make it an enjoyable experience for her. We introduce the hijab in a way where she associates the hijab with good feelings and good memories, right? That when she grows up, she remembers when she first wore her hijab, her first hijab that she was bought or that she bought, right? Her father took her shopping, right? And that day that she bought hijabs or abayas or jilbabs or whatever the case is, that, daddy also took me to my favorite dessert place, or he took me to the toy store and bought me toys. So this is what you should do with your daughter. And I encourage the fathers, to take on this role. The norm is that, since it's hijab, that the mothers usually are the ones that buy hijabs for their daughters. However, what I encourage is the brothers to take your daughters out, you yourself, take your daughter out and make it, for example, a father and daughter outing, like a special event, a special occasion. You treat it as a special occasion, like it's a surprise, for example. And you take her to shop for abayas or hijabs, and you let her choose what she likes, right? Take the money out, for example, and hand it to her and make her feel as if she is the one that is doing the shopping. Make it an enjoyable experience for her. Let her go into the store and choose the hijab that she likes, as long as it fulfills the guidelines, it's within the guidelines of the Sharia. Let her purchase it. And then after that, don't just leave it at that. Take her somewhere that she likes to eat. For example, if she likes a specific restaurant, take her there. if there's a toy that she mentioned to you that she likes, that she wants, take her to buy it. Make the day that you buy her the hijab the day that you also go buy her that toy, so that she associates that day and the hijab with good feelings and good memories, and that she's happy when she's buying the hijab. Because psychologically, what will happen is she will believe that these good things that she got and this special day that she got is because of the hijab. Psychologically, that's what's going to happen automatically, that she's going to associate the hijab with those good things. And if you look at what we find today with a lot of our sisters who have become, Allah musta'an, have fallen prey to the propaganda of the enemies of Islam, and feminism and liberalism and secularism even, that they have come to believe that putting a display of their beauty all over social media, right, and wearing revealing clothing and wearing almost no clothing whatsoever and putting themselves all over social media, that they believe that this is some sort of happiness, or that this is something that she has the right to do, right? As what you hear in most cases, that it's her right to do such and such. In reality, a lot of these sisters, the reason why they are doing it and the reason why they are so against the idea of covering and hijab is not necessarily because they hate the hijab. No, rather it is due to sometimes a trauma that she associates with that hijab, that her parents most likely forced her to wear hijab at a young age without teaching her anything. And so she grew up wearing the hijab, however resenting the hijab because of how it was introduced to her. And because she associates the hijab with punishment, and associates it with abuse, and associates it with feeling trapped, and associates it with being her brothers, for example, being favored over her, right? All of these negative feelings were present when she was wearing hijab or being told to wear the hijab. So the first moment that she got to now remove the hijab, she did it. The first moment she got, the first opportunity that she got to remove the hijab and wear whatever she wants. Usually wearing whatever she wants and revealing herself is not something that she's proud of, even after she does it. And she may even have remorse for it. And that is why you find sometimes some sisters going on and off between the hijab. During Ramadan, putting the hijab on, and then after Ramadan, taking it back off, and then going through a phase of rebellion, and then coming back and having some remorse and putting the hijab back on, or wearing somewhat of a hijab, but also wearing tight-fitting clothing. This, trial that they're going through and this constant battle, right, within themselves is due to that. Is due to the trauma and what they associate with that hijab. And this is a problem that we have, and that is why it has to be changed. And that is why it has to be changed for the future generation, that we have to raise our daughters in this way, not forcing her to wear the hijab, not beating her to wear the hijab, right? Not making it feel like it is a punishment. And this is for anything. Everything, as a parent, anything that is good that you wish your child to do not use it as a punishment for that child. For example, many parents make the mistake that when a child has done something wrong, whether they've done something wrong at school, or let's say they fought with one of their siblings, or they hit one of their siblings, the parent will tell them, go to your room and memorize your Quran. Go to your room and read Quran. Why? Is Quran a punishment? Why would you get that? Why would you make that child associate the Quran with punishment and anger? So the child at that time, just like when you take away a privilege, right? If you ground a child, let's say when a teenager does something wrong, you ground them. They can't go outside or can't go with their friends for a week, or you take away their video game, or you take away, if it's a younger child, you take away their toy. They can't play with their toys for a few days. That child will become angry and have negative feelings and some sort of resentment towards you as their parent, because you took away something that they like. In the same way, once you use things that you know are good from the religion, however you use it as a parent as punishment, then all you are doing is causing that child to now resent that thing. Because when they look back, they will always feel the negative feelings. They will associate that thing, the Quran, the hijab, praying salah, right? All of these things they will associate with getting beaten, getting the belt, being punished and being put in their room while everyone else is having fun, not being able to go outside, not having their toys, not having their video game. They will associate it with these things. And what that will cause, because the child is still innocent at that age and doesn't know any better, they will now hate that thing. They will hate the Quran. They will hate salah. They will hate the hijab, and they will rebel. And so other than Allah's guidance, at that point, you're in a very difficult position as a parent, because in most cases, that child, unless Allah guides them at a later stage in their life, and they go back to Allah and in tawbah and change for the better, in most cases, the way they will end up growing up will be a bad way. It will be a bad way that you will regret. That you will regret. The next point regarding getting our daughters to love the hijab is to build their self-esteem when it comes to the hijab. Because as we know as parents, a lot of little girls and young women, when they go outside in public, especially in the West, where the hijab is not the norm and is not the standard, right? And they will be usually an outcast, and they will be singled out, made fun of, bullied sometimes, right? That you compliment her and you tell her how beautiful she looks and how beautiful she looks in hijab, right? And the beauty of the hijab, you compliment her often. There isn't enough compliments that you can give her. Compliment her every day. Compliment her every time that she is wearing the hijab and that you see her in the hijab, right? So that she builds a self-esteem and a confidence in her hijab. And this is important, especially from the fathers, because the mothers do this naturally. However, it is important that it comes from the father as well, because a little girl, when she's younger, that is the person that she trusts. Her father is the one that she trusts. And you'll find a lot of little girls, they're closer to their father, because that is their protector. That is the one that she feels safe with. That is the one that, if, for example, someone did something to her at school, she'll cry to her father, right? Because she knows naturally that that is who will protect her. That is her protector and her leader. And so it is important and incumbent upon fathers to be the ones that take on this role of building their daughter's self-esteem when it comes to the hijab, and that they compliment her often and remind her how beautiful she looks and that she looks like a princess, etc. Whereas others, you find them putting makeup on their daughters at a young age and wearing revealing clothing and tight dresses, etc., and telling their daughters that they look like a princess. Rather, you as a father have to take on that role and tell your daughters that they look like a princess and that they are beautiful in their hijab. In their hijab. And as we mentioned, that if you do this and you build her self-esteem, then what this will do also is that once she goes outside in public, she'll feel comfortable in her hijab, and she won't feel uncomfortable. She won't feel worried about people's compliments, or that when someone makes a comment about her hijab, she won't break down in tears or feel uncomfortable, right? Because you've done your job in building her confidence, and so she'll become stronger when you do that. However, if you just neglect it and leave her to herself, then definitely that will become a problem. Definitely that will become a problem. So you want your daughter to be confident and not only love the hijab, but be confident in wearing the hijab, especially if you take her to public school. If you take her to Islamic school, then that pressure isn't there because all the little girls are wearing hijab. However, if you take them to public school, which I advise against, strongly advise against, that you must constantly deal with this issue of the hijab and constantly discuss it with your daughter and compliment her. And it's an everyday thing. This isn't something that you can just do one time and believe that she's going to be okay forever. Rather, you have to constantly revisit this matter and build her confidence and make sure that you sit with her and that you ask her how she's feeling and how she's feeling regarding the hijab. And if anyone, bothers her at school because of the hijab, and then you deal with it. You deal with it by reminding her of the beauty of the hijab and the wisdom behind the hijab and why, Muslim women wear hijab and why they are better than other women because of, covering themselves. Better, obviously not in every aspect, but in the aspect of covering, in that aspect specifically, because you don't want your daughters to believe that they are better than others just because they wear hijab. So I say that better in terms of because your daughter will be comparing herself to others who may not be covered. And so you have to make her understand that covering is what is better than uncovering. Covering is better than uncovering. Another thing that you must do also is to sit down with your daughter and have a heart-to-heart conversation, a one-on-one conversation where you discuss not only the wisdom of the hijab and why Allah legislated the hijab for women, right? And this will not happen when she's a child, 4, 5, 6 years old, but rather when she gets a little bit older and she starts to understand, for example, 9 years old, 8, 9, 10 years old, around that age, is when you can have that type of conversation with her, where you answer some of the questions that she may have. Why do I have to cover? Why my brothers don't have to cover, right? Why do I have to cover? And why does so-and-so's daughter doesn't cover? Why do I have to cover and my older sisters don't cover? These challenging questions you have to deal with and sit with your daughter, because at times what happens is if you yourself don't engage in the conversation and bring it up and open that door of dialogue with your daughter, she'll keep it in. She'll keep it in and she won't say it. And that will be eating away at her, and you will not even be aware of it. And then it will have negative results. It'll bring about negative results. So you have to be the one to bring up this topic and address any of the doubts that she may be having, any of the insecurities that she may be having, any of the misunderstandings that she may be having. And as we mentioned at the beginning of this talk, that you are well aware that they are targeted, that all over the internet, all over social media, all over YouTube, television shows, movies, all of these things that children are exposed to today, they are being taught the opposite of what Islam teaches our little girls. They are being taught the complete opposite. So you have a battle, it's an everyday battle, where you have to counter all of these different doubts and all of these different ideas that are being poured into our children's minds. You have to be a parent that is aware and awake and not in deep slumber, thinking that, oh, alhamdulillah, I take her to Islamic school so everything's fine, right? You cannot be that naive as a parent, especially if you live in the West. Especially if you live in the West. Just think about it, you yourself as an adult, how you struggle with your deen and how you struggle trying to stay away and navigate through all the fitan and all the trials that exists today. So imagine a child. Imagine a child who does not have the mental, cognitive capacity, that does not have the intelligence yet, that has not developed understanding of a lot of these things. Who is more vulnerable? So you have to understand that this is an ongoing battle that you have to be dealing with until, inshallah ta'ala, that child reaches adulthood. Now, another point is to teach your daughter, as we mentioned, the matter of the beauty of hijab. However, when you teach her this, because she's at a young age where, just bombarding her with ayat and hadith, verses in the Quran, and a hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and telling her about punishment if she doesn't wear the hijab, and so on and so forth, that might be a bit too heavy for a child. So what will work at that age is that you teach your daughter about the beauty of hijab and the wisdom behind hijab by using logical analogies. By telling her, for example, do you know, sweetie, that all things that are valuable. So you ask her, for example, what do you deem as valuable? Something that is very precious to you that you own. Maybe it's one of her favorite toys. Maybe it's her favorite shoes, whatever it is. She may have something that she deems as very precious and very dear to her. And you ask her, that thing, would you just leave it out in the open for anyone to see? Or do you put it somewhere special, somewhere safe, hidden from others, right? She'll say, no, I would not, leave it out like that. I would put it somewhere in my closet, in my drawer, somewhere, right? Likewise, people who have a lot of money, they put their money in banks, right? It's in a bank. Or people who own gold, for example, gold bricks, they put it in a bank, and you need a specific key sometimes to get important things from the bank, like documents and things like that, and it's put in a safe, right, or in a vault. And people who have important documents or jewelry, for example, they buy safes, and they put these things in a safe that has a code, and not anyone can get into it except whoever has that code, right? This is how we deal with everything that is valuable and precious to us, because we don't want to lose it. We don't want others to take it from us, right? Likewise, her as a girl. That is the same concept for her awrah. And there's no comparison between any of those things, the value of all these other things that are from the dunya, and her as a Muslim woman or a Muslim girl. That her body and her as your daughter, you are more precious. You tell her that she is more precious to you than any of those things, and more valuable and more important, right? And so because of that, then she covers herself so that no one else can see that beauty. And that beauty is someone that people will, something, some evil people will try to take advantage of and try to exploit, right? That she is a target and that there are bad people out there, etc., etc. And so that is why you cover, in order to protect yourself, so that no one else can see that beauty that you have. And that people who try to say that you cover because you are ugly or because you have no hair, whatever comments kids make, that is just them, especially if it's girls, being jealous. Or if it's boys, it's usually, if it's children, it's out of ignorance. But you have to teach your daughter and get her to understand the idea of beauty is not what the Western agenda tells little girls, that taking pictures and making filters and then posting it on social media and sending it around, and that this is beauty, right? That you have to look like this and you have to look like that and make your nose look like this and change the tone, the color of your skin, right? All of these different things. And that now having natural hair or a natural body is something even now that is attacked, and that doing cosmetic surgeries and wearing wigs has now become the norm. And this is the standard of beauty today. So you have to tell your daughter and teach your daughter the way the Western idea of beauty and what they try to sell women, the lies that they try to sell women, as opposed to how Islam came to preserve them and honor them. And Islam does not see them as cheap, as just some objects that are putting themselves on display for everyone to enjoy. Rather, Islam protects them by preserving them and concealing their beauty. Concealing their beauty. And this issue, obviously, this is a given. However, we still have to say it, and that is the issue of resorting to abuse and resorting to yelling and screaming and these types of things in order to get your daughter to wear the hijab, and that should never ever happen under any circumstances. That should never happen under any circumstances. And as parents, you have to understand something, and this is a vital, is a crucial point when it comes to raising children in general, is that when your child disobeys you or does something that they know to be wrong, right? It is not your job as a parent to simply, force them to do that thing and to exercise your right and your authority as a parent. Your job is not to always just exercise your authority. I'm your parent, so do this. You have to do this because I say so. If you don't do this, Allah is going to punish you. If you don't do this, you're going to the hellfire. That does not work. If that worked, we would find it from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he is the best of examples as a father and as a parent. Do we have him ever reprimanding his children in that manner? Do we ever have him chastising, whether it's his own children or other children, in this manner? No. Rather, with a child, that is from the most detrimental things that you can do to a child. And that is in reality how you get them to actually hate the very thing that you are trying to get them to do. So it has the opposite, the opposite will occur. So if you are sincere in trying to, as a parent, trying to get your child to love obedience and obeying Allah and having manners and behaving properly, and you are sincere as a parent, then you'll do what it takes, and not just the anger that you are feeling in that moment. You just have to express it and find somewhere to vent, right? You're frustrated with whatever is going on, and your child will do something and you'll explode and yell, right? And thinking that this is parenting, that, oh, now I've gotten my child to do what I said, and you've actually, you're successful. You think you've done something good as a parent. Rather, what you've done is actually very detrimental to your child, and you haven't accomplished anything. You've actually accomplished the very opposite of what it is that you are claiming to be wanting for your child. And so in that moment, you have to realize that simply trying to get rid of that anger that you're feeling in that moment and take it out on that child that hasn't even developed a mind to understand. They may know right from wrong, but they may not understand why it is wrong. So it's your job to teach instead of yelling and shouting. It's not parenting to yell and shout and scream and hit. That is not parenting. Even if your parents raised you that way, that was not correct. That was not correct. And what parents usually tell their children, oh, this is how we were raised, and that isn't correct. If you were raised like that, then that was wrong as well. And if your parents were raised like that, then that was also wrong. So because you went through it does not make it right, and that you now pass it on to the next generation. It has to stop somewhere. It has to stop somewhere. And so you do not resort to abuse or yelling or screaming by any means necessary, but rather you deal with it with gentleness, especially with daughters, because they are softer, right? And so they require more gentleness than our boys. Likewise, we have to sit our daughters down and educate them on the ahkam, the specific ahkam of hijab. So what is the hijab? What are the conditions of the hijab? That it not be extremely colorful, that it attracts people, that it not be transparent, that it not be tight, right? Etc. So there are certain conditions that the hijab has to meet. If it does not meet these conditions, then it is not hijab. No matter how many people say it, no matter how many women say it, right? It does not become hijab. Rather, what becomes hijab is what Allah and His Messenger have legislated. Just like every other thing, just like every other act of worship. Because hijab is an act of worship. Wearing hijab is an act of worship. So an act of worship can only be fulfilled by doing that act of worship in the way that it was legislated. You do not choose, right? And unfortunately, there are many sisters that have been duped by things such as liberalism and this notion that you're just free to do as you please and that everyone's opinion is valid, right? Every opinion is valid, right? This lie that they are told. They've actually taken these ideologies and these concepts from these kufri, these ideologies of disbelief, and now they try to apply it to Islam. Now you find homosexuals trying to apply their logic to the Sharia and say, oh, well, homosexuality, there's no actual proof that it is forbidden. So, and this is due to the asl of what they actually believe in secularism and liberalism. I'm free and I can have my own opinion. I'm entitled to my own opinion. I'm entitled to follow whatever I want. This notion, they adopt it and then they take it and try to apply it to Islam. Likewise, sisters who struggle with the actual hijab, and instead of asking Allah to guide them and asking Allah to forgive them and trying to surround themselves with sisters that maybe wear hijab and maybe would be a better influence on them instead of the ones that they mix with, they try to attack the deen or attack anyone who is advising them with the deen, and they try to apply these ideologies and these methodologies that they've adopted from the kuffar and taken from the kuffar, and they now try to apply it to the hijab, saying the hijab is whatever, as long as you're covered, then it's fine. As long as what you're wearing is modest, then it's fine. Right? Was that the hijab that was worn by Aisha radiallahu anha and the Sahabiyat? Is what you consider today hijab with makeup and just a headscarf, colorful headscarves and long shirts and pants, right? Just because they're loose fitting. This is hijab. So a lot of sisters try to make the hijab what they want the hijab to be. So you have to teach your daughter what the actual hijab is so that she learns and she knows what the hijab is, what the correct hijab is, Another important point when it comes to the hijab is that the parents must be on the same page when it comes to the hijab. On the same page in terms of when you introduce the hijab to your daughter and introduce wearing the hijab to your daughter, and likewise the education aspect, taking her out to buy the hijab, all these things that have been mentioned, parents have to be on the same page when it comes to that. Because if a child sees a clash between the parents, believe it or not, that child is smart enough to use that opportunity and take advantage of that opportunity. And they'll go to the parent that is leaning towards what they want. So if your daughter wants to wear dresses and things like that, she'll lean to that parent, right? And then what happens is, if parents, and this goes for everything, not just for the hijab and our daughters, but when it comes to raising children in general, that when you teach your child, for example, that if one parent, let's say in this example, that the father, before going to work, tells children that once they come back from school today, they must have their dinner before they can have any snacks, right? They must do their homework once they come back from school, and then they can have cookies, for example. Then they come back from school and they say, oh, I'm tired, and the mother is the only one home. Oh, I'm tired, I'll do my homework later, I want cookies. And then she says, okay, don't worry, here's the cookies, just don't tell daddy. As a mother, and this can happen on both sides, so this is not just, we're not picking on the mothers here, but this can happen also on the other side, that it's the mother that tells the children, you have to do this and that, and then the father is the one that, sneaks behind her back and gives the children what they want. You may think that this is not a big deal, right? As a parent, that it's just cookies, that it's just something minor. What's the harm in giving a child cookies? They just came back from school, they've had a long day, right? What's the problem? The problem is not regarding the cookies. The problem is that that child knows that their father, or in both cases, or their mother, one of the parents, forbade them from that thing until after they do their homework. Now you, the other parent, come along and say, go ahead and have it, even though your father said no, or even though your mother said no, but don't worry, we will deceive them and don't make sure you don't tell them, and here you go. What have you now taught your child? You've taught your child to lie and to deceive. You've taught your child to lie and to deceive. And then after doing this, so many times, then you wonder why when they become a teenager and they're smoking and drinking and committing zina outside, and they come home and when you question them, they lie to your face. You wonder where that comes from. You raised your child upon deception and lying, and they watched you allow it, and they watched you do it to the other parent. So in some cases, if it's the mother doing it, to their father, and if it's the father doing it, to their mother. So a child that was raised to deceive and lie to their parents' faces, right? You believe that that child is going to grow up an honest child that's not going to hide and deceive, right? And hide behind your back and do things behind your back. And you only have yourself to blame, because if this is how you raise your children, then this is you are going to reap what you sow. You are going to reap what you sow, and you're going to have to deal with the negative consequences of that. Today it's cookies and candy, and tomorrow it's going to be drugs and crimes, and then you will wonder where this calamity came from. And it's shocking to see many parents afterwards. I can't believe my child is doing such and such. I raised them as a good boy. I raised her as a good girl. No, you didn't. You raised them to lie. You raised them to lie and deceive the other parent. You raised them to lose respect. Because if one parent is deceiving the other parent and teaching their children to deceive the other parent, what respect will they have for that other parent? What authority does that other parent have? Especially the father, who is supposed to be the leader of that household, right? And the authority in that household. So if a mother does that constantly, why do you think then children grow up and they're back talking their father and speaking to their father as if he's one of their little friends, right? And when he tells them something, his word does not mean anything, right? Where does it come from that children lose that respect for their father, right? And just walk by him and as if his statement and his word means nothing, right? This is where it comes from. An entire upbringing of disrespecting and deceiving and lying and sneaking behind that father's back, and then when they grow up, they just continue to do so. And likewise, the other way, vice versa, losing respect by lying and deceiving to the mother. And so we have to be vigilant and we have to be careful of these things. We have to not take it as something light, thinking that, it's just cookies, it's just something minor. But rather, you are causing a bigger problem for your child. You are causing a bigger problem for your child, bigger than just cookies and ice cream and snacks. Rather, you are causing them to become used to and accustomed to lying and deception, which is a calamity in and of itself. Now, there are cases where the matter of, raising our daughters to wear hijab, and making sure that she, begins wearing the hijab at a young age. What happens in certain cases is the matter of divorce, whereby a couple will be married and they would divorce when their daughter is at a very young age. And what happens is, at times, in most cases, the mother will have custody of that child, especially in the West, and she becomes weak in her religion. Whereas at one point maybe she was religious, and now she is dressing the daughter in an inappropriate way. This is a trial and a huge calamity that happens. And these sisters must fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that it does not mean that now, just because the child is under their care alone, or that they have custody of their child, that now that responsibility and the reckoning that is waiting for you when it comes to this little girl, that it is not, that it has ceased to exist. Rather, it continues to exist, and you will still be held accountable for that daughter, for that child, right? And that even if the father isn't in the picture, or even if the father, for example, may have passed away, right? Or even if the father is in the picture and is, co-parenting with you, however, out of spite or out of whatever the case is, that you don't take this matter of raising your daughter upon hijab seriously, and now you are fighting with her father. You are fighting with her father regarding how she dresses and what she wears, right? Now, at one point she was wearing hijab and she was wearing abaya. Now you allow her to wear leggings and tight clothing and let her hair out, right? And that, especially living in the West, do you forget that your daughter is a target? Do you forget that there are perverts out there that prey on little girls? Taking your daughters to, for example, swimming pools, public swimming pools, putting on bathing suits, a little girl who grew up wearing hijab and covering herself, right? And knowing what, awra was. Then you changing that and changing her fitrah and putting on bathing suits for her and allowing her to mix with men and allowing men to hug her and allowing her to get into, for example, even if you remarry now and you have a new husband, right, who is not her mahram in the aspect of he's not her biological father, right, that you allow her to be as close to him as if he were her own father. And huge calamities happen in cases like this. And that is why in most cases in the Sharia, why custody is given to the father when a woman remarries. It is for this reason, especially when it's girls. It's for her protection. It is for her protection, and that is from the wisdom of the legislation, that if a woman remarries and she has a daughter, then the custody goes to the father, because the father is the protector and will protect his daughter from any harm. However, if she is not in his care, and she's in the care and sometimes maybe alone with a man who is not her biological father, a lot of harm can come to that girl. And it happens in many cases. It happens in several cases. And so, as a woman who remarries, then you must still be vigilant when it comes to the issue of hijab, and that you continue to make your daughters wear the hijab. You continue to make your daughters wear the hijab and the legislated hijab, not just a headscarf and then she wears whatever she wants. Rather, she has to wear the shar'i jilbab. She has to wear the hijab that fulfills the conditions of hijab. The final point that I'd like to mention, which is a point regarding parenting in general, however, we will link it to the matter of hijab, and that is the calamity of what a lot of parents fall into, and that is that when they are busy, or when they just want quiet time, or when they want to watch their own TV shows and watch their own, sports, whatever the case is, that they just take an electronic device or give their smartphone or their iPad or whatever the case is. They give it to the child and tell them, go over there and go watch something. And they leave that child to watch, shows and movies, nonstop for hours, or go on YouTube and watching all kinds of YouTube videos without any supervision, without anyone knowing what it is that this child is being exposed to. And a parent who has any sense, living in this time that we are living in, knowing the calamities and the detrimental content that is out there for children, and if children were to be exposed to these things and that they see it, can change their lives forever, can have lasting effects psychologically and even in the way they think for the rest of their lives, right? With a danger of that extent, knowing that as a parent, that you would leave your child unsupervised with YouTube, with television, with TV shows, allowing that child to navigate through these things as they please, then you have to question yourself and why you even had children in the first place. You have to question yourself and really ask yourself, why did you even choose to have children? If this is how you wish to raise them. And I shouldn't even say raise them. I should say not raise. This is how you choose not to raise them. Because in reality, you are not raising that child. That child is being raised by the internet, or by Netflix, or by Disney, or by YouTube, right? You believe that as a parent, that you have the right to sit on a phone for 2 hours and 3 hours gossiping about what so-and-so was wearing at last night's wedding, and what this person was doing and what that person did and what so-and-so was dealing with and this and that, while you just give an electronic device to a child and tell them, go to your room and watch whatever you want. You think this is parenting? Rather, you will be asked on the Day of Judgment about that. You will be asked on the Day of Judgment regarding that. And anything that happens to that child, and I've heard stories and people have come to me regarding things such as parents who did this, and the rude awakening that they got is that there was a child predator speaking to their daughter through some sort of way on the iPad. And not only once or twice, for months on end, to the point where that child, only about 11 years old or so, a girl, reached the point where they wanted to go meet this person. So we think this is a joke? We think this is something minor? That people like this don't know that parents are doing this, leaving their kids unsupervised on apps and on these electronic devices? You would think these types of people don't prey on children, right? Let alone all the other evil that the child can be exposed to there, right? But they can communicate with people, and they do that. And children by that age, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, they know how to do that. And so in order to protect your child, you must be vigilant. And like I said in the beginning, this is an ongoing battle. This is not something that, you parent for a quarter of the day and then the rest of the day you leave your child with their electronic devices. That is one of the most detrimental things that you can do from so many angles when it comes to their religion first and foremost, psychologically, even learning wise. Why children today can't even read until they reach a certain age, way later in comparison to before. Why children cannot learn in the regular ways that children always used to learn in the past, right? It's the problem is these electronic devices and how often the children are on it to the point that they are addicted to it, to the point where they are addicted to it. And if you remove it from their hands, we've seen all these videos all over social media where children have killed their parents for taking their devices away from them. It's reached that level of craziness. It's reached that level of craziness. However, that child that reached that level of craziness, who put them in that situation? Who allowed them to get there, right? Who chose to sit around and do nothing all over the house, or binge watch TV shows for hours throughout the day, while other electronic devices raise their children. It's that parent. That same parent that later on will deal with the consequences of what happens to that child. They're the same ones that caused the child and allowed them to become that way. And so this is not a solution to simply allow your children to be exposed to all kinds of evil and leaving them unsupervised with YouTube and all these other things is not a solution. And that is not a way you raise your child. Rather, they should not be exposed to any of these things. And you should not allow them to even use any of these things, nor watch TV shows, nor watch cartoons with music and all these evil concepts, right? Even in cartoons, they teach children immorality today. And they teach them how to disrespect their parents. And they teach them these concepts of, you're free to do as you wish. No one can tell you otherwise. Even these concepts of what beauty are. These little subtle messages are all in this, in Disney, in movies and everything. And so you think with your child that it's just an innocent thing, right, that they're watching. But you as a parent have to be aware that what you think you're introducing your child to or allowing your child to have a little bit of fun, right? That's what you think it is. But in reality, you are corrupting that child. And you are allowing that child to adopt a culture and a way of thinking. And that they adopt the standard of the West in terms of what is right and wrong. You are the one doing that when you expose your children and when you allow them to watch TV and TV shows and these cartoons and movies and so on and so forth. So that has to be cut off completely. That has to be cut off completely. And you have to find other forms of halal entertainment for your children. You have to find other forms of halal entertainment for your children. Take them to the gym to play sports. Take them swimming. Take them to the park. Sign them up to sports teams, right? If you have friends, for example, once a week or whatever the case is, take them. So, take the children. So the parents take those children to somewhere indoor playground or something like that, so that they can have fun together, right? But to just leave them watching television, that is not a solution. And so in connection to the issue of the hijab and the affair of the hijab, then that is why if you find your 8-year-old daughter, 9-year-old daughter averse to the idea of hijab, why do I have to wear hijab? Do I have to? Do I have to wear this hijab? Can I not just wear this? If you find your daughter, doing that, then know that you have neglected the affair of introducing the hijab to her from a young age. But also the problem is you are from the parents that have allowed her to watch these shows, TV shows, YouTube, and you leave her to her devices without any supervision. Likewise, the friends that your daughter has, do you know who they are? Do you know who their parents are and how they raise those girls, right? Where is she getting these ideas from? Where is she getting this, advice from other girls that, oh, you don't have to do this and you don't have to do that, right? You look better like this, once you leave your house with the hijab, it's okay if you take it off. And then you just put it on before you go back home. Who is telling her this other than her friends? Or giving her the confidence to do such a thing? So you have to be aware of all these things as a parent. You have to be aware of all of these things as a parent. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide our young sisters and the young Muslimat and strengthen their iman, and to strengthen the parents in dealing with this matter. And this is not an easy task to deal with, especially in the time that we are living in now. And I ask Allah to fill all of our daughters' hearts with the love of Islam first and foremost, and the love of hijab, and the love of modesty, and the love of morality and chastity, that they choose that over anything else, and that they do not become vulnerable and susceptible to the calls out there that try to pull her the other way and try to take her away from the light and pull her into darkness. And then I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide all parents of young girls in educating their daughters about hijab, and in choosing the right methods in keeping her loving the hijab, and to guide them in that, and to give them tawfiq in that. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect all the little girls, Muslim girls out there that have to struggle, especially living in the West and living in the societies that we live in today, regarding the pressures and the peer pressures and everything that we find on social media today, and all the distractions that exist today that wish to deter her from the fitrah and to change her fitrah. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide them, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow them to grow up to be righteous women who are chaste and who are modest. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect them from the evil of the evildoers and those who wish harm upon them, whether physically or mentally, with their ideological attacks. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect them from all the doubts and the misconceptions that are out there in hijab. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cause the hijab to be beloved to them. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fill their hearts with the love of hijab. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fill their hearts with the love of hijab. And likewise, not just the young sisters, but also all the Muslimat. Any sister that is out there that struggles with the hijab, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for you to wear the hijab. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fill your heart with the love of hijab. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow you to become strong in your iman, strong enough to leave off revealing clothing, and leave off posting your pictures and posting yourself all over social media. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you from the doubts of the kuffar. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you and to increase you in knowledge of Islam, so that you are aware of when you are being deceived with these ideologies and these concepts that tell you that you are free. These ideas that you hold, that you may hold, that tell you that when someone advises you to cover, that you tell them, haram police, or whatever the case is that we see a lot of sisters falling into now. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them tawfiq, to make tawbah and to repent. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to constantly remind them of a day that none of these things will benefit them, and the only thing that will benefit them are their good deeds, what they did in this life, what they accomplished in this life, what they put forth in this life. And that even after they die, all these pictures and all these things that they posted all over social media, for them to realize that they will remain and that they will stay, right? And that they don't control who screen records them when they're doing what they are doing, and who screenshots their pictures, right? All the evil that exists out there, right? And that even after, if they choose one day to make tawbah and to repent, you have no idea who still has all of these things, right? And the amount of fitna that you may be causing by putting yourself out there in the way that you are. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive them. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive them and pardon them, and to guide them, and to protect them from the evil of the evildoers. That concludes our talk. Inshallah ta'ala, I hope that it was of benefit, and that you may have learned a thing or two regarding how we can cause our daughters to love the hijab, and some points regarding parenting. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make parenting easy for those that are in the West and those who are navigating through all the trials and difficulties that exists in the world. I ask Allah to make hijrah easy for those in the West, and that Allah opens the doors to hijrah to the Muslim countries, into safe places where they can live and reside without any issues and without any difficulties. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make that easy, and that and to guide the Muslims to strive to make hijrah and to leave the lands of the kuffar. And that Allah opens their eyes to seeing the detriment and the evil around them, so that they know that there is no place for a Muslim in these lands of disbelief, that there is definitely no way that a Muslim who wishes to practice their religion completely, that there is no place for someone like that in these lands of disbelief. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.